I'm Nick Friggin! Whoa, okay!
Hello and welcome everyone to Backlot Banter, the movie review show here on Backlog Banter. It's a channel that you should subscribe to if you want to talk about all things movies, all things Nicolas Cage.
Especially,
because if you're a fellow Cage head like we are, you should join the Discord. That link is in the description. You can talk about movies with us, you can talk about games with us, you can talk about Nicolas Cage with us, just as a guy in general.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's a lot to talk about with the film, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent.
Oh, truly.
A film that at its center revolves around Nicolas Cage as a cultural phenomenon in many ways.
As a legend, as they continuously refer to him.
Exactly. He is a legend. He is a legend. But Tucker, don't worry about that. But Tucker does. It's time to wake up for me. Hey Tucker, do you think that The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent lives up to that Nick Cage legend?
Well, here's the thing. We were very excited for this film for multiple reasons. This film has been circulating in the ether, the idea that Nicolas Cage is playing himself, and it's going to be about all his movies and all his roles, and it's going to be a crazy, heightened version of his own reality. And so we get this trailer, we're seeing Nicolas Cage, they're making references to The Rock and Face Off and Con Air and Croods 2, all the classics. Yeah. and on a base level concept, the idea of playing himself, of referencing his history, of making fun of the fact that he is a legend in the industry, great stuff. But frankly, let's be pretty categorical here. Most of the good moments are in the trailer.
Yep.
This movie is a trailer movie. They really take all the funny parts that you're raring to see, and they put them in the trailer, and otherwise, the film is fine. It's passable. It's not egregious in any particular capacity, but otherwise, I personally found it to be a massive disappointment. It's not massively talented, because I do think that it has so much potential that it just clearly does not live up to. It does not lean into its own ridiculousness. It doesn't lean enough into Nicolas Cage's history. And instead, what we're presented with for approximately 60% of the runtime is just generic buddy action comedy.
Yeah.
In a way that was really underwhelming.
I feel largely the same way. There are strong elements to this film, which I reflected in my score on Letterboxd. Follow me, Tanner_Dykstra on Letterboxd. But yeah, there's just a cohesion lacking in this film. Some sort of overarching unique style to tie it all together. Because as you said, Tucker, this movie, when you boil it down and when you really sit down and you're in it for more than 45 minutes, is just like an adult-oriented action comedy buddy movie. Yeah. And the buddy element is one of the stronger elements. Nick Cage and Pedro Pascal have a great chemistry. They're very fun together. They're getting all sorts of drug-fueled and non-drug-fueled hijinks. It's a lot of fun.
There's a lot of hijinks in this film.
But the plot of this, that if you call that the story, the plot of this is where the issue really comes in, because they decided to throw in this plot line of the CIA thinks Pedro Pascal is running some sort of cartel and has kidnapped a politician's daughter.
Yeah.
And Nick Cage gets drafted to basically be a spy for the CIA and unearth this sort of conspiracy that's going on. And it just sucks. That plot line just is really, really, really bland, underwhelming and boring. It feels like a plot of a different movie. We get like half a dozen of these movies every year, like these adult-oriented Tiffany Haddish, Ike Barinholtz type things, and that's who stars in this movie for that
Great
plot
point.
line.
Yeah. I think the problem with that storyline, the plot of this film, isn't that it's inherently bad, but is they really just did not do anything with it that made it unique. This could be a fun way to make Nicolas Cage have to replicate his classic roles to appease this guy who's a drug lord. Like, there are elements of this that could have been played out that would play into what makes this film very unique, but otherwise it's just Pedro Pascal is a big fanboy for Nicolas Cage, which is the fun part of this movie.
Yes.
But a lot of the movie keeps having to drag us away from that to pay attention to Tiffany Haddish and Ike Barinholtz and the godforsaken Pedro Pascal's cousin, who's the actual cartel lord. Yeah. And none of it is interesting, and the politics behind it with the U.S. not wanting to not have this Spanish guy run for government and the kidnapping of that president's daughter. Like, there's a lot of elements to this that are not interesting, are not played out very well, and frankly, I think are mostly underwhelming because not only are they not where the strengths of the film lie, but none of these side characters are interesting. I really think that the only characters that are even decently well realized in this film are Pedro Pascal's character and Nicolas Cage's character as Nicolas Cage. But otherwise, the supporting cast is, I think, pretty awful across the board. Like, Tiffany Haddish does her Tiffany Haddish thing, but she's not as funny as she has been in the past. She's not given a lot to work with. I think that his wife and his daughter have no chemistry with him, and their storyline is like as by the books as you can get. It's like, hey, he's a dad who's not around, and boy, he's really too focused on his job, isn't he? And then, but actually we can come together. And
let's sit down and watch Paddington 2 together. Yeah. I think another issue with this film is, and I might get some pushback on this, is I felt something lacking while I was like sitting through the first 30 minutes of this. As we said, when you get into the actual plot of like the CIA stuff, what that really kicks off like 45 minutes in, maybe halfway through like about. There is just like this film feels like they cut some stuff out or just left things out entirely, and I think what they left out is developmental moments for Nick Cage as a character in this.
Sure.
Because we're just jumping from scene to scene where there's a huge like jump in the timeline where he like learns about the thing, gets recruited by the CIA, has some fun time with Pedro Pascal, and then we're like into his supposed last day in Spain with Pedro Pascal, and it's like there's something missing there. Like we just jumped a whole like a couple days. It feels like
it's unclear because. I don't remember if they said how long he's supposed to be there. I think it was supposed to be a weekend excursion. So maybe there isn't time missing there, but it does feel like a lot of these scenes just kind of happen. We're not led up to him. There's this really strange sequence where he's looking at Pedro Pascal across the party, and there's like some a voiceover from the CIA characters behind it.
That's the moment I was talking about.
What's going on? Where did this come from? And it doesn't feel like it fits into the natural progression of anything. And I think that a lot of it comes from the structure of this film, that they want you to say, hey, this is Nicolas Cage. Let's have some fun with the fact that he's Nicolas Cage for the first 30 minutes. And then they'll be like, oh crap. We need to introduce like all the plot. So they just spin their wheels. So be like, boom, okay, he's kidnapped. Oh, the CIA wants him. He's just totally on board with that pretty much immediately, or not like he's not willing, but he's just into that.
Well, yeah, they guilt him with like, what if this was your daughter, sort of thing. Yeah,
and there really is no lead up to that, which makes it just feel like, oh, all right, time for the plot now, in a way that doesn't feel natural, and also hits the brakes on the part of the movie that does work, which is Pedro Pascal's being a big fanboy of Nicolas Cage and making references to the movies and their dynamic developing, because they end up becoming very good friends, and their friendship is pretty believable. I think at times it's like, oh hey, we need to have like a cheesy moment for them to bond, but the two of them are good actors, they have good chemistry, it's fun. But we're constantly being yanked away from that to focus on other things. I do want to mention, as I said, the godforsaken cousin of Pedro Pascal, who plays the real drug lord.
Luca is his name or something like that? Lucas. Yeah.
I'm not going to remember that after today, so I'm very glad we're doing this review today.
There you go.
I think he's really bad. He's not an interesting character, and this actor is doing this fucking accent voice that I mentioned this in the theater, and none of us could not think of it afterward. He sounds like Paolo from House of Gucci. He's doing this whoa voice, and it's really obnoxious, and he doesn't feel threatening. He doesn't feel like a real person at all, and I just, every time he was on screen, I'm like, please just shift back to something I care about, for the love of God.
What was I gonna say? Okay, so I was talking about development for Nick Cage as a character, which I felt is lacking in this, until basically his family arrives after
out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere. I guess Lucas brings the family there, or is it Pedro Pascal?
It's Pedro Pascal's character. Who,
okay,
by the way,
he does it sort of.
Can you remember his? Oh, Javi. I was just saying, can you remember his name? Yeah. Javi brings them out of nowhere,
innocently,
but
he innocently brings them in, thinking that he's actually helped them, because there's this whole manufactured misunderstanding about is Javi the head of the cartel? Is he going to execute Nick Cage and his family and stuff like that? No, it's Lucas. But throughout the first part of this film, we get introduced to to this character conflict of Nick Cage has been an absent father. He's too career focused. He's too self obsessed. And he doesn't care for like what his daughter wants to do, or being there for her really without being the center of attention and things like that. There's a whole fun sequence where he's at her 16th birthday party and like is clearly drunk, is drunk and is making up a song about her on the spot, which pretty fun because you get to see Nick Cage doing some wacky antics.
Yep.
But they have a perfect vehicle to develop Nick Cage's character in the imaginary version of himself, which is referred to in the film as Nicky. Which I think, I haven't seen this film, but I think is him from Wild at Heart.
He's wearing a shirt that says Wild at Heart on it. So.
Oh, okay. But yeah, it is a younger version of him, de-aged Nick Cage, and he's sort of, it's like this imaginary friend that Nick Cage has. And Nicky is basically the personification of his ego.
Yeah. Of his career, of his youth, of his fame, of these things that are haunting him and preventing him from acting maturely in all these situations. Yeah,
it's basically the thing, because, there's a therapist scene early on as well where Nick Cage says, like, oh, people always say that I work too much, but that's the point, why wouldn't I be working if I love acting? And that's the Nicky ego coming through. Not being there for his daughter, putting himself and his career first. And they have this vehicle where Nick Cage can literally have conversations with his own ego.
Yeah.
And they use it
Three times.
Yeah,
something like that.
Once at the beginning, for a little like fun comedic moment to establish who Nicky is. Once in the bar
where they start making out.
Where they kiss, which is pretty fun. But I think that's also somewhat of a developmental moment for Nick Cage. And then at the very end, for basically Nick Cage to, I think he like punches Nicky in the face or whatever, because Nicky's like, you gotta get out of here.
They're like a dream sequence. It's really strange.
It's like it's a dream sequence sort of thing. But it's a cool idea, and the de-aging isn't awful terrible.
It's fine. It's weird in some like specific instances you're focusing on it. But...
But it's crazy to me that they had this perfect vehicle where Nick Cage can have conversations with himself. You can heighten the Nick Caginess of it all, the manicness that he embodies. But they don't use it enough. It's insane to me.
They definitely don't use it enough. And I think what that idea that seemed so cool at first, and then I kind of kept forgetting that was an element that they could be using because they were staying away from it so much. But I do think that what we're coming down on all of this, and as we're starting to wrap this up, this movie has good ideas, it has good potential, but it really doesn't realize them. This Nicky idea, or the idea that he has these personas in his head that are references to his older movies that were externally referencing the movies because Pedro Pascal's character is a giant fan and he's got all the props and stuff. All this stuff isn't foregrounded like it absolutely should be. That is the unique element of this film. Otherwise, it is not a very interesting film at all. And frankly, I think it would be a bad movie if we didn't have Nicolas Cage leading and being himself and these sort of things. I mean, it has that, so it's a decent movie because of that. But I was hoping to get other imaginary versions of Nicolas Cage. Get his Con Air persona with the long hair. Get him from fucking Snake Eyes. Get one of his earlier roles, one of his later roles. National Treasure him that has to teach him how to, actually do stunts or something like that. Like, they really could have leaned into the fact that he has this diverse and interesting acting history and that they're all conflicting in his head and he's got, like, this internal conflict about it. But it is largely underplayed, and it's underplayed for pretty poorly written, poorly acted, bland action comedy stuff that I think really ends up frustrating me with this movie. Like, this movie is not bad, but it is a very big disappointment to me.
Sure, yeah. And we've been negative for most of this review, so I don't want to end it on negativity. So I think I just want to run down some things that I really actually do enjoy. The whole sequence of Nick Cage and Pedro Pascal being on LSD and trying to write this movie and thinking they're being followed by some mysterious guys who are just sitting somewhere in Spain.
That's fun.
That's really fun. in that sequence you get the Nick Cage saying like, okay, just turn your head and laugh, just make it subtle, and you get this long take of Pedro Pascal turning his head and just locking eyes with these guys and laughing like maniacally.
Yeah,
hilarious. The whole prop room thing is really fun.
Doesn't go on for long enough.
Doesn't go on for long enough, but it is fun in itself. You know, you get the shitty Castor Troy from Face Off sculpture or whatever. You get the Nick Cage pillow, like the thing that you can wipe your hand over, and it's his face. Tucker, what do you have any favorite bits from this that you wanna shout out?
I think maybe I like the bits in this movie, but on the whole, and I started with this discussion with they're shown in the trailer. Most of the fun bits, most of the references to movies are shown in the trailers. Not that many surprises, which I think is why I left a little underwhelmed. I was wanting there to be these pops, these moments, a lot more references to movies. The Paddington 2 thing is fun. Them talking about movies is fun.
Yeah, when Pedro Pascal brings up
Caligari.
They keep referencing the cabinet of Dr. Caligari. When Pedro Pascal has a deep cut where he brings up guarding Tess, which a few deep cut Cage heads will appreciate, some things like that. Nick Cage also brings up a one that I've never heard of. That's like Captain. It's like Captain something. I'm like, I've never heard of it. Heard of that movie. But yeah, just basically any scene that just has Nicolas Cage and Pedro Pascal hanging out, having a good time, is really quite good.
Talking about movies, referencing Nick Cage movies, all that stuff is fun.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, there's that gets sort of put on the back burner when we have to do these CIA things, and sometimes that's not even all bad. I like the sequence of him accidentally like drugging
Touching
himself and. Tiffany Haddish saying action to wake him up. That's fun. It's fun stuff.
That I think is the most fun or most surprising fun I had with the sequence in this film.
That plays into Nick Cage being like this manic actor sort of guy.
Yes, absolutely.
And of course he does Italian face at the end, which I guess is probably also supposed to be that same sort of thing, but doesn't play as well.
No. Also isn't drawn out long enough for it to feel meaningful.
Right.
Yeah.
But on the whole, it's fine. Like if you wanted to go see this for Nick Cage, I would say go see it. Just go in, with tempered expectations.
Absolutely, yeah. Go in with tempered expectations that this movie's potential and its base concept, it does not handle with the aplomb that it should. We should come out of this being like, wow, Nicolas Cage. We're saying he's a great actor. He's good in this movie. We should come out of this being like, wow, man, I want to go rewatch all these movies. I can't wait to see what he does next after he's like sort of reflected on himself. But, he did a movie where he was himself. And that's what this movie's going to be remembered as. And probably nothing more, frankly.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, well, but that's all right. I like I said, I thought it was decent. And Tucker, we also have a second movie review coming out very soon after this. We'll be reviewing the other film that came out this weekend, The Northman, directed by Robert Eggers.
One of the other films.
There's
other ones.
There's other ones, I'm sure. Our good friend Timo Nelson, if you're familiar with the best show on Backlog Banter, Quest for the Bestest.
If you're familiar with him.
If you're familiar with him, or the other best show on Backlog Banter, the Backlog Banter monthly show.
Truly.
He'll be joining us for that Northman review, but we will see you then.
Do a Cage thing. Oh, yeah, do the...
Let me get myself presentable here for Nick Cage.
Yeah, you were really looking nasty before you did that.
Exactly. Just absolutely out of sorts.